Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Sunday evenings are Chityala time, and we are going to talk about this ongoing saga of tariffs. Is Trump weaponizing the tariffs? If so, who is he hurting more? The consumers in the United States or the countries on whom he's putting all these tariffs? Let's get the answer from Sridhar Chityala. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskar, good morning to you. I'm doing very well, sir, and good evening from here. So therefore from East in Asia. So looking forward to an interesting kind of a discussion today, Sriji.
Thank you so much, sir. Let's get the slide deck rolling.
Yeah. Right. I think the first point that Sree set the context, next slide, please, which is to say, is Trump weaponizing? Is he using this as an economic tool, or is he using it as a weaponization tool in terms of anybody who doesn't toe his line? He seems to be, pulling in this tariff hurting policy against that specific nation. Quite a few nations have faced the wrath, the EU, the Japan, Koreans, Vietnamese, and then, of course, now India is right under the radar. And, of course, China's negotiations not complete. And, of course, Russia will not negotiate and is throwing all kinds of tantrums. What started as an economic policy where he said, a lot of countries have harnessed and exploited the U.S. footprint. Now it's time for the U.S. consumers and the U.S. businesses to earn some money back, and that's how the tariff agenda started. And abnormal deficits, barring India, most of the countries were in what we call as trade surplus. Trade surplus with United States. India as well had a trade surplus, but not as substantive as some of the other countries had. So the negotiation started. And he kind of one after the other, he went through the agenda. But what then it has turned out is he is now trying to bully the world. For example, he has been throwing all kinds of tantrums against India, which we will cover shortly. He bulldozed his way into Korea and Japan. He made them toe the line. And for the continued issues with Russia, he threatens them with 300%, 400%, 500% tariffs, and they're not bowing in terms of, their ongoing tussle with Ukraine. He tried to do something similar with the Hamas in Gaza, and they have not toed the line. So what we are witnessing is the unraveling of the Trump's policy, in terms of what started as an economic policy is now turning into, as everybody is beginning to now say, this is not going to work. Of course, his coterie of advisors like Lutnick and Besant and, even Peter Navarro, they are just, playing the game with him in terms of moving Trump's agenda forward. But I think we are at an inflection point as we look at the next slide.
Yes, please.
Okay, the Dow was down. Dow was down 500 points. S&P was down 400 points. S&P was down 100 points. Nasdaq was down 400 points. The Wall Street is saying this tendency or this inconsistent tariff policy is not going to work. That was backed up by the employment numbers, which came in much less. Fortunately or unfortunately for him, the consumer confidence still remains high. He remains, even in consumer sentiments, he remains high, but the markets are not biting into this, which is to say that, hey, you can't continue. You need to bring some stability and sanity, which is based on economic principles, but not on trying to weaponize. So we had the first adverse reaction on last Friday to various economic data. Of course, he went to the Federal Reserve. He tried to be positive as well as negative. He continues to threaten, the Fed chairman, Dr. Powell, but then he is falling short of saying, okay, he's going to remove him. He threatens to remove, but then his coterie of advisors, come back and say, hey, that's not a good idea to do, and let's see what happens. Right now, as we look at July end, we originally had factored in 2 rate cuts before the end of the year, but it's very highly unlikely that there would be even one rate cut before the end of the year. The bond markets continue to be, expecting 10-year rates to slightly come down. So the rates have come down to 4.2% from the peak of 4.5 to 4.3. Now it's around 4.2. Again, another economic data which is still in Trump's favor is most of the FX rates have remained fairly stable. The bond rates, as I mentioned to you, the 10-year treasuries is around the 4.215%. And then, of course, the energy prices, which is very critical for keeping the economy going, that seems to be, between $67 to $69, depending on West Texas or the Brent. So even that seems favorable. And those who kind of hedge their bets on gold, the gold is inching up because generally when you have economic uncertainty, you generally have a movement in the gold. As far as the momentum is concerned, economic momentum is concerned, I think we saw, as I mentioned, we saw the first sign of trouble, but we believe that there is nothing chaotic, predicted. They believe that Trump will regret.
Sir, before you go to the next slide, I have one thing to add to what you said. Sir, in the history of stock market in the United States, now is where the highest amount of money is in money market funds. And let me break it down to viewers who don't understand what that means. Well, money market funds are more or less tied to the interest rate. Like, for example, the Fed's rate of 4.5, I think, or 4.75. I don't remember the exact number.
4.2. 4.2. Yeah.
Money market. So what it means is the highest amount of money is in money market, which means people have sold their stocks. They're already getting ready for a recession. They don't think the stocks are going to go much higher, although it's still the Max 7 that is pushing higher. But they are getting that 4.2% interest on their money market, and they seem to be happy with that. So this is something that needs to be looked at. Sir, one psychological thing about rates, as long as the Fed keeps the rates up, people keep thinking that the economy is doing well, and therefore the stock market reflects that. The moment he drops it, even by 0.25%, many specialists are saying that then the stock market will start falling rapidly. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that from the logic point of view, what you have laid out is pretty much spot on, Sriji. Just to add to your point, money market funds are like your safe cash custody, safe deposit.
Yes.
So money, generally you find a increase in value of money market funds in anticipation of some kind of major economic catastrophe. Okay. So I use the word, the treasury rates are at 4.2%, but generally, these are like, 1 week, 10 days, 30-day rates. So the typical money market fund rates, when you're holding it for greater than 30 days or greater than 60 days, they tend to be around 3.5 to 3.75%. What Sree is pointing out is that a lot of money is now sitting in money market funds, speculating that there is some looming economic disaster in the horizon. But there are no economic data that is pointing to that fact that, the economy again grew last quarter, which is finished June 30th. Let us see what happens in the current quarter. And this is where whether Trump chooses weaponization or whether he uses economic policy as a tool remains. A lot of people, both in markets, speculated the market to go south. It did not. Year-to-date S&P performance is 6% plus, which is pretty good given the way we started, and the Nasdaq is around 8% year-to-date in terms of performance. When you look at those two kinds of numbers, that's broad participation of the markets. Everything is happening, as Sree said, is around the tech market. S&P also has some of the tech companies like NVIDIA and Apple and so on. So you see performance. But for the first signs of some kind of turmoil, we began to see last week. How that will cascade its way into the following weeks, time will tell. And it depends on whether Trump wants to be sane or insane, or if he continues and persists with this insanity policy, threatening all nations to back off, and otherwise he will charge them enormous amount of tariffs, is not biting. None of the countries, China has not bitten, Russia has not bitten, India has not bitten, but some of the other nations who are reliant on United States as trading partners have buckled. Mexico and Canada, which represents, we'll come to that in a second. I'll wait for that slide to pop up.
Yes. Before we go to the next slide, again, I have a couple of things that I want to announce beforehand. I have a big revelation before we go to the Russia section. And also a small request to all of you to like this video, because we are telling some things that are hot off the press, viewers, and we will be the tip of the spear in this, I guarantee you. Sridharji and I have been in DGI, have been so far ahead of everybody else in predicting things, and it all comes out true. So please like this video and help us get this thing across to as many people as possible. Next slide, please.
Okay, where do we stand on tariffs today? We covered at length. Let's go to the slide, and you can, next slide. Wow, there you go. Mexico and China, which represents almost close to $1.2 trillion of $3.2 trillion deficit, today sitting at 25% and 30% reciprocal tariffs. Mexico, China, and Canada, I'll include. And you can see between them, close to 42% of the trade happens, and between Mexico and Canada, 1.2, Mexico, Canada, China, we covered this 1.2 trillion. They are sitting at very high percentages, and President Trump has not kind of winked, and those countries neither have winked. They keep saying that China's trade is almost imminent. They've made tremendous progress. Mexico biting this 25%, and Canada is not biting this 35%. So therefore, but they make up a significant part of the imports from a trading point of view. So what is the consequence of that as it flows into the economy, and what concessions he is prepared to grant, time will tell. But as you go across the rest of the countries, the developed countries like Germany, Japan, Korea, and Korea, etc., you see that the rates have been moving towards 15 to 20%. India remains stuck at 25% plus penalties, and he's also been threatening India on enormous penalties for importing Russian oil. We'll get to that in a minute. So I think he has made progress with quite a few countries, but with the countries that matter, he has not moved as yet in terms of negotiations and settlements, Sriji, as far as where we are with tariffs is concerned.
Sir.
All right. Now comes India. So we have been saying, it's almost kind of imminent, and it doesn't seem to be imminent. So therefore, Trump issued all kinds of warning. He used even Pakistan as an insulting bait, which is to say that he's going to do oil reserves, and then in the process, maybe India is going to import oil in his wishful dreams from Pakistan. And then he went on to say, what is Indian economy? That actually unnerved and stirred up a lot of people in India, notably the economists. This guy has gone out of his mind to say Indian economic growth is not a true growth, which prompted a buffoon from India in Parliament to toe the line of Trump, contrary to the economic data. Why is India holding back? It says we are a strong economy, we are independent. Nobody is going to push us into the corner. Now let's go to the next slide. We'll touch on a couple of very important points. So the 25% tariffs only applies to 45% of the export. So therefore, India believes even if it hits 25%. It will be 50% if they will be able to manage and overcome that issue. Key items like electronics, pharmaceuticals, and minerals are exempted. And in the month of July, India's mobile exports for the first time crossed 40% into United States. So it does have economic parameters. What else India has stated? India has politely and subtly made its point, namely, something, you remember Quad? We have a weapon called Quad, okay? So please remember that to Trump and his team, including his defense secretary. It's also stated your fuel levels are astonishingly at lower levels in terms of, remember, your prior regime blew up a lot of those fuels and sold it. The strategic reserve, which is typically used for wartime situations, is at an abnormal low. What was the intent of the Quad? The intent of the Quad was not only India to be a very key defense anchor in the region, but also to refuel many of the US planes. So they have politely delivered the message not only to Lindsey Graham, but the Ministry of Defense, Defense Secretary. Please think about that. We may not be an able and willing supporter should that situation arise, and should you threaten us with these kinds of tariffs. We don't want to weaponize, but if you want to hurt us, then we have a mechanism to play back. Now, the energy minister, Dr. Puri, has also made the statement pre 2019, 2000. We only had 2% of our energy imports from Russia. No problem. If you impose the tariffs, we have other able and willing players like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other small states. We can easily divert our import supply from those nations rather than be subjected to these abnormal penalties that you're trying to levy. So several subtle messages have been delivered, though the media is trying to play up this which is, agriculture and dairy. No, I think there are more strategic issues that are at play. This is what prompted Putin to today issue a statement, which is to say, you cannot go on pressurizing India in terms of defense equipment and energy. This is not going to stay the course. So these are all the different underplays. There is also another important variable here. India is saying we were the first people who said we will open the markets and we will lift the tariffs. Therefore, we should be getting the most beneficial tariff rate, which is between 10 to 12%. If you don't give, then we'll continue to negotiate, and we believe, and we are your strategic ally. Trump thus far not only has been threatening, but he has also been playing the soft pedal, which is to say, India is a strategic ally, but he has not bitten the bullet.
Sir, one thing, America needs to be cognizant of the fact that Russia is taking rupees for the oil it is selling to India. For a country like India, it's a big deal that it doesn't drain its current account to pay for the oil, because the oil has now become a huge bill. I'm just not talking about, let's say energy. Whatever energy it's getting from Russia, it's getting paying for it in rupees. And it perhaps leverages that to pay in rupees to other countries also, like Saudi Arabia and UAE, because all these countries can use the UPI to use that money to repatriate in terms of paying their people who are living there of Indian origin in rupees. I don't know if it's happening or not. My point, sir, is will the United States accept rupee for the energy they'll sell?
See, I think India has offered concession that it is prepared to not only invest close to $350 billion over 10 years in terms of natural gas. It's put that offer on the table. It has also committed to buy a tremendous amount of natural gas from United States, given that India is a growing economy fastest growing economy at 6.5%. A number of households in India is likely to be connected via gas pipes. So the demand for India's natural gas is enormously high. Now, India is saying, no problem, 65% of my reserves are in US dollars. I can do business with you in US dollars. I'm not worried if it is about being in INR. The problem of INR, Shriji, is many of the countries which have no foreign exchange reserves or afraid of sanctions are using, and India is giving them the flexibility with INR. But India is saying, I'm willing to trade in euro, I'm willing to trade in US dollar, I'm willing to trade in rupee. As long as
the price is right.
As long as the price is right. Exactly.
Next one, please. Viewers, we just crossed 1,000 viewers, and we still have only like less than 300 likes. Could you please up the like, because here is the big reveal. Sir, news is coming down the line that NATO is preparing to send in 250,000 troops into Ukraine.
Indeed. So what is Trump's game plan with Russia? Okay. Medvedev made a statement, Walking Dead, and that effectively means that they have automatic remote activated nuclear program that they can unleash. The moment that statement was issued by the former prime minister or president,
either way,
Trump said, oh, he has used the N word, so we're going to send 2 submarines so he sent 2 nuclear submarines. There's already other nuclear submarines around the region. Now that prompted Vladimir to say, hey, you can send any nuclear submarines, we can track all of them. Not only that, we outnumber you in terms of the number of submarines that we have. So this is Vladimir Putin's kind of statement. Simultaneously, you have now exercises going on in the Taiwan Sea and the Japan Sea between Russian and Chinese vessels. Right. And, this follows the RIMPAC exercises that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that was going on in South China Sea and in the Pacific. Remember, we just made the point, which is if United States needs to do something, they definitely require the support of India, especially in that Indian Ocean extending into past the Andaman Sea and into Malacca Strait and moving through South China Sea. India's support is pivotal. Australia is a bit further away, doesn't have the capacity. Japan is country that is to be squeezed. Again, in DGI, we covered both on the northern side of Japan and the southern side of Japan. Southern side of Japan is Senkaku. Between the northern side of Japan and Russia, you have the Kuril Islands. And these are vulnerable points where Russian footprint is already present. So I don't know what the agenda and the game plan of President Trump is. He's stirring up what is unwarranted. And if any of these things cut loose, there's a very big problem because nothing to intervene. Russia and China are very closely collaborating in this to counter United States. Now, it's also important to point out now there's a new terminology that is being coined. It's called G2+1. The world had consolidated into, we believe that there are 2 powers, Russia, United States and China, the 2 powerful economies. Now they believe that India is rising. India is rising and standing independent. So, which is to both the annoyance of the Chinese as well as to the annoyance of the Americans. Okay, so therefore they are trying to see how they can pulverize or squeeze India to yield to one of the 2 nations. I just don't believe that. And Russia is also putting pressure on India to toe the line or to be accommodative to Chinese. But I just don't believe that India will ever do that, given the amount of distrust or mistrust that prevails between India and China. So very interesting economic, geopolitical, and the rising power of India, which the so-called superpowers are trying to squeeze. And this is what you are witnessing around the world in terms of the geopolitics. Okay. Trump's Russia agenda continued to push tariff threats, while any security analysts call the Trump's this nuclear as a joke, not a military. And former NATO General Wesley Clark has said, Trump has underestimated Russia, and he should have dealt a stronger blow. And his influence is what you are now beginning to see in some of the moves that NATO is making. And NATO has been pro-Ukraine right from NATO, and EU has been pro-Ukraine. Remember, they have also increased their GDP spending. 5% of the GDP spending is towards defense. So I think we are in a what I call geopolitical quandary, and no nation is blinking. Everybody is kind of moving this forward. What has happened? So every policy, foreign policy of President Trump is in a moribund, as you go to the next slide. Now, Hamas, for the first time, has said, we will refuse to disarm, we will refuse to ceasefire unless and until the Palestinian state is recognized and Palestinian state, independent Palestinian state is established. This is what happens when you take money from nations that can technically be hostile. Now, which is the nation from which in the West Asia most money has been taken from? Qatar. And who has been playing influential role either with Iran, either with Hamas, or with Hezbollah, or going back in time 4 years with Taliban? Who is it? It is Qatar. All these fellows are sitting with a footprint in Qatar, and this courage can only come if there is an invisible hand of Qatar pushing this kind of agenda, which has prompted. So even from small to large, the only other guy who has not yet come to the forefront and said are the Houthis, saying we will now launch our attacks again into the Gulf of Hormuz, as well as in the Yemeni Sea. I think that could happen very soon. So the whole foreign policy, where Trump has used tariffs as a tool, is slowly beginning to unravel by people whom he trusted and from people whom he has taken money or signed deals as an investment into United States.
Are the neocons in influencing foreign policy on Trump? Viewers, what neocons are? Neocons are war hawks, warmongers, and they typically tend to be on the Republican side. It was started by, I think, Billy Crystal, not Billy Crystal, some other Crystal in Philadelphia, and then it is now grown. If you want to know some of the neo-conservatives is the thing. Some of the neocons that are still around, one is, of course, Lindsey
Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham. And then John
Dick Rumsfeld was a neocon. Dick Cheney was a neocon. They're all kind of the warmongers who pushed the senior Bush into war in the first 4 years of his presidency, and then some sanity remained and started to pull back.
So do you think that neocons are still having a fair amount of influence on the Trump administration too?
No, I think that what you're witnessing here, especially on, I don't know, because we haven't at depth covered this whole Russiagate scandal, which was cooked up by Obama, the FBI, the CIA, and some of the officials in the administration. That whole of that is unraveling in parallel, which is giving enormous strength to Russia, which is to say, you guys conducted the whole elections and surveillance programs by your own president, and how credible and trustworthy you are. So you're beginning to see that angle being pushed and played very hard, Sree, on one side. On second side, we remember our CARE as well as Qatar hand is very highly visible in terms of the vulnerability of Trump with this tariff weaponization, in terms of securing their own rights, having given huge amount of money, both for investments into United States as well as some of the political funding that he requires for the midterm elections. He has only hair-thin majority in House. His whole policy will, unwind if he doesn't win the House elections. So he's highly compromised, and many of the powers from outside are pushing the agenda, Sree.
Very, very unfortunate, but let's wait and see how this thing plays out. I'm sure sanity will prevail very soon. I think the American consumer will start screaming, because the actual thing the new tariffs are kicking in a few days' time, and I can tell you, viewers, the extra rates will be immediately applied to everything in the market. Even if the thing was imported 3 months ahead of time, it will immediately be applied. When the tariff rates go down, well, keep hoping it will never go down. This is why prediction. This is how markets move. unfortunately, we don't have a choice, so we have to eat, and so therefore we use it. Sir, we have a couple more drawings here. Would you like to add to that? Because I don't know if there is any more slides left.
No, I think that we wanted to use that slide to remind people that we have covered this 𝗬𝗏, one in the Kuril Islands, where Russia has a footprint.
Yeah.
If you see above the 𝗤𝗏𝗡𝗏 and the Kuril Islands, that is where the Russia has a footprint. You see the red lines that you see? The red lines is where Russia has got a full-fledged army barracks. Where is it? It is almost at the tip from where they can kind of hurt Japan. Their feeling is that Taiwan, Japan, and Korea, these three countries, clearly Russia and China can put a squeeze. And the only way United States can withstand and sustain this in the current circumstances, is with a Quad as a weapon. Now, the Quad as the infrastructure, but the Quad infrastructure is the Quad meetings have not taken place, and India has issued a very subtle warning. And India is the most powerful outside of United States from a geo-location point of view in Quad. When you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Yes, this is bottom. You can see Senkaku Islands. So if you go further up, as you go, what is Miyako and Okinawa? They are the southern islands of Japan. So in the southern bottom section of the Japan, you have Senkaku. How close it is? It is very close to Taiwan. Then on the northern right up near Tokara and Oshumi, that's where you have this little dots. That's where you have the Kuril Islands, where you have a Russian, a full-fledged Russian barracks ready to trouble the Japanese. So you have a real squeeze in the East China Sea or East Asia Sea, and then of course in the Taiwan Basin. So I think that any kind of pressure that Trump is prepared to put either around Russia or in this region is going to be met with fierce resistance. At least you have NATO in the broader Russian region, but in the Pacific as well as in the East China Sea, East Asia, you don't have without Quad, there is no mechanism for United States to combat Sree. We covered this very extensively. We said if there is a first wave of attack and takeover, I think Senkaku will be taken over, and that means that they will say, well, we are not taken over, that's our island, so we have occupied. And that will be the sign of trouble brewing. And Japan has no mechanism, or Japan will not be able to act with it without United States support. You have from the northern side of the sea, northern side of Japan, the Russians squeezing the Japanese as well.
I think we're done with our conversation. Let's take some questions, sir, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First question from Sajid Kumar. India's services exports to US is 400 billion. Really? No. If US quizzes on this, wouldn't there be a massive job losses and turmoil in our middle class? 400 billion, sir? Is it true?
It is. It's 400 billion. Services exports, yes, 400 billion. It's huge. I think the President Trump is smart enough. Services is not subjected to tariff. Remember that it is the demand and supply. The demand is coming from United States. When you have a supply-driven push with price differentiation, which is what happens in mobile and rare earths and pharmaceutical and chemicals and other types of gems and so on, that's a supply-driven push. This is a demand. This is a US demand-driven push. So what you are seeing here is that this is going to be United States businesses will pay a significant price, and they have all factored this in terms of pricing their costs as well as the services that they render to their corporates and so on. No, this will not be subjected to this 25% levy.
Next one, please. Rimuru Tempest. If I understand how Indonesia and Japan deal went, they agreed to invest billions in US economy. Does that mean that the additional tariff was surely due to F-35 deal?
No, they're not F-35 deals, but I think that the opening up of the auto sector, remember that we covered this, close to $300-400 billion of Japanese investment was committed towards the auto sector. 90% of the profits will remain in the United States. Remember the steel deal that the Japan did. So that also favored the construction of the deal. I think Indonesians are more, again, rare earths. Indonesia has got rare earths, so it's part of the deal. And Indonesia will also, buy some high-end defense and high-end electronic equipment from United States. That was very much part of the deal.
Next one, please. Question from Srinivas Kambhampati. Namaste Sridhar ji, Namaste Sree Iyer ji. Is there an attempt to defend the dollar as reserve currency or something else?
No, this is tariff war. So we haven't come to this de-dollarization or dollar as a reserve. Look, I think if Japan, EU do the deal between the two of them, they control between 60 to 70% of the moment of global trade. I think we have shown the numbers. There's no way China is going to do deal with United States in renminbi. China and United States deal will be in US dollar. So the question of reserve currency continues in terms of the dollar until the trades begin to shift. Of course, Russia-India deal may not be in dollar. Russia-China deal may not be in dollar. Remember, I think Sree touched on still Saudis and UAE are doing trade with India in US dollar.
Yeah, I mean, that will be the last to shift, sir. It'll be a huge deal if they do that. Next one. Milban Cherian wants to know, is President Trump raising tariffs globally to remove the tentacles of the cabal from all the countries?
No, it is purely, as you have seen, it started with reducing the imbalance in the deficits, trade deficits, also access to markets. He says that US has not gained access to any of the markets as a reciprocal gesture. Is obviously all this has to do with the growing amount of debt and bringing some investment money badly needed in terms of pulling up the infrastructure in 4 or 5 areas. We touched again. One is rare earths. Second is the EV. Third is the power sector, because all this artificial intelligence is going to derive huge amount of power, whether it is nuclear, whether it is alternate. There's investments needed. Second, the natural gas reserves, which they opened up in the Alaskan basin, that's going to require somewhere between $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion of investment, not just for harnessing those reserves, but actually to liquefy that gas, put them into containers, and actually transport them down the Pacific. So therefore, it's investments for those purposes that United States needs money, which is what he's trying to get from many of these countries.
For 𝗣𝗫𝗏 or 𝗣𝗫𝗏𝗍, is Trump's planning to impose emergency through warmongering and cancel the debt in near future?
No, I think that right now the whole tariff game is political in terms of, toe my line or, I'll hit you. Second is, you're not giving me access to markets. You have a high imbalance. You are exporting more than importing from me. So therefore, I'm going to hit you with penalty. Right now, that's the basis.
Next one, please. Sriramchandra Namaha. Sriramchandraya Namaha. What about Mexico? Will Mexico wall Trump is going to build?
Right now, it's lost in the back burner. He's sending all the people back through IC enforcement. So right now, his whole focus is on whether he gets a Nobel Peace Prize, how many countries are going to toe his line, and how many countries are going to say, Trump, I surrender at your feet, and how many countries are going to accede to his tariffs.
Next one, please. Isn't Senkaku a bone of contention between Japan and China? Siddharth wants to know.
No, it is a contention between China and Japan.
Next one, please.
Sorry. Contention between China and Taiwan. Senkaku is claimed by Taiwan. Sorry, Sriji.
What would happen if India dumps USD's treasury bonds? They are only 290 or something billion, not much. Sir.
What would, I mean, it's what would happen? Nothing will happen. I mean, the question is that US is, look, US bonds are creating a very attractive return. Modi is, please remember, Modi is a tradesman. He's a mercantile man. He doesn't spend a penny if he's not earning money for him. He will negotiate everything, but he'll put money and earn a buck for India. So therefore, he's not going to dump anything when they are priced, greater than 4%.
Yeah. Next one, please. What's the rationale behind outsourcing the manufacturing to China by USA?
Cost.
Labor. Yeah. Cost. Yeah.
And the greed. For that, and the greed, Sriji, they will open the market. They never opened.
Yeah. They never did. Yes. Thank you so much, Sridharji, and wonderful session again, sir. We'll be back again next Sunday at the same time. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much, Sriji. Thank you.